My sister held our little brother underwater so he could meet Harry Potter. When I yanked her back, she screamed, "The portal requires submission." I just stared at her. That was 9 months ago. Yesterday, she sent a letter asking why we stopped her from finding peace. My sister Emma came home with a black eye last Tuesday. The girls at school had cornered her again, calling her freak and weirdo for reading alone at lunch. At 15, she had no friends, was completely flat, ate in the bathroom stalls, and spent weekends in her room. I found her crying into her Harry Potter pillow that night, whispering she wished she could just disappear somewhere she belonged. Mom and I held her while she sobbed about feeling trapped in a world where nobody wanted her. We promised things would get better. We just wanted her to find happiness somewhere. Emma discovered shifting through TikTok, meditation techniques to transport your consciousness to desired realities. She'd lie still for hours, listening to subliminals, visualizing Hogwarts. It seemed harmless, even therapeutic. She started smiling again, journaling about adventures with fictional friends who accepted her. Mom bought her crystals and LED lights for her shifting room. Her therapist said fantasy was a healthy coping mechanism. Emma made online friends who shared scripts and methods. We were thrilled she'd found an escape that didn't involve self-injury. She even started washing her hair again, saying Draco complimented it. Sure, she spent entire weekends shifting, but she was healing. The bullying didn't sting when she believed real friends waited in another reality. But soon, Emma's shifts grew longer. She'd skip school, claiming time moved differently. There, she started speaking with a British accent, insisting her Hogwarts memories were more real than ours. When I suggested limits, she screamed that I was blocking her frequencies. She covered her walls with shifting symbols, spent Mom's credit cards on crystals that enhanced portal energy. Her online community encouraged deeper methods, hyperventilating, sleep deprivation, special herbs. She believed people who couldn't shift were low vibrational. She started trying to help others shift. First our cousin, then neighborhood kids, guiding them through dangerous breathing exercises. Parents complained after she told their children their real families waited in better realities. She'd wake me at 3 a.m., insisting she'd learned to shift objects between realities, showing me ordinary items she claimed came from Hogwarts. When her therapist expressed concern, Emma accused her of being a reality gatekeeper and refused further sessions. She stopped eating, saying food weighted her to this dimension. Mom found her teaching our 10-year-old brother Jake her methods, promising he could meet Harry Potter. When we intervened, she sobbed that we were trapping her in hell. The shifting wasn't escape anymore. It was her only reality. I woke to Jake's scream from the bathroom. Emma had him in the filled tub, holding his head underwater. I yanked her back, Jake gasping, choking, eyes bulging with terror. Emma fought me, surprisingly strong, screaming about, "The portal requires submission. 30 more seconds and he'd have shifted," she wailed, lunging for Jake again. "The drowning sensation is the dimensional barrier breaking." Jake vomited water, crying hysterically. His lips were blue. Emma kept reaching for him, explaining frantically that near-death experiences create the strongest portals. She'd been planning this for weeks, researching how water conducts interdimensional energy. Mom crashed in, saw Jake shivering, and shoved Emma against the wall. "You almost unalived him," Emma laughed, eyes unfocused. "Death isn't real when infinite realities exist. He'd just wake up at Hogwarts." She turned to Jake, speaking gently like he was stupid. "You were so close, buddy. You felt the shift starting, didn't you? The burning in your lungs was magic entering." I held Jake while Mom called 911. He couldn't stop shaking, kept touching his neck where Emma had held him down. She'd convinced him they'd meet Ron Weasley if he trusted the process. Emma tried explaining to the police that drowning was a proven shifting method her community recommended. She showed them screenshots, hundreds of posts about using extreme consciousness disconnection. She'd been practicing on herself in cold baths, building tolerance. "He consented," she insisted as they cuffed her. "Tell them, Jake, you wanted to meet Harry." Jake just sobbed harder, afraid to look at her. The paramedics said another minute underwater would have caused brain damage. Emma smiled at that, saying brain damage just meant partial shifting. Even strapped to the gurney, she coached Jake. "Remember the water darkness. That's where the portal opens. I'll perfect the method and come back for you." I returned home from the hospital to find Mom catatonic on the couch, staring at nothing. Jake had locked himself in his room and wouldn't come out, not even for water. The house felt hollow, like Emma had taken all the air with her when the ambulance left. I was heading to check on Jake when a notification popped up on Emma's abandoned laptop on the kitchen counter. The message glowed on the screen. "Astrid shifts. Is Emma okay?" I heard sirens. My stomach dropped. I approached the laptop slowly, as if it might bite. The Discord app was still open, messages flooding in from usernames like Reality Jumper and Dimension Walker. But Astrid's messages kept coming, urgent and insistent. I sat down and typed back, "Who are you?" The response was immediate. "Emma was supposed to text me after her breakthrough tonight. Is she okay? Please tell me she succeeded." My hands shook. This person knew. They knew what Emma had planned for Jake. Mom suddenly snapped alert, lunging across the room. She grabbed the laptop, screaming at the screen. Her voice cracked as she yelled about "you people" and what they'd done to her daughter. More messages from Astrid flooded in, rapid-fire texts about helping Emma transcend her pain and guiding her to freedom. "She was ready," Astrid typed. "The water method works. I've helped dozens cross over." Dad's car pulled into the driveway. He walked in to find Mom shaking the laptop, me trying to screenshot everything visible before it disappeared, and Jake's muffled sobs echoing from upstairs. Dad's face went from confused to furious in seconds. He declared no one was to touch Emma's devices until we figured out who these people were, but I'd already captured enough. Astrid had been coaching Emma for months. Jake finally emerged from his room, his small face puffy and red. He asked if Emma really thought he'd wake up at Hogwarts. Then he broke down completely, sobbing that he'd felt himself dying, felt his chest burning and the world going dark. He kept saying Emma promised it would be magic magical, not scary. We attempted dinner, but it was a disaster. Jake refused to sit in the chair Emma used, standing pressed against the wall instead. Mom kept getting up to check the window for police cars, as if Emma might somehow return. Dad stress ate while hunched over his phone, Googling shifting communities harm and online manipulation teens. After Jake went to bed, I snuck back to Emma's room. Under her mattress, I found her tablet, the one she'd hidden from us for months. The email app was still logged in, showing correspondence with Astrid dating back 6 months. My heart pounded as I scrolled through their exchanges. Water holds memory, Astrid had written. Consciousness transfers through drowning simulation. The body's panic is just the ego fighting release. Dad caught me reading, his initial anger melting into horror as he saw the emails. Astrid had sent detailed instructions, specific water temperatures, breathing patterns, how long to hold someone under. She'd called it assisted breakthrough and praised Emma for being brave enough to help others. Mom's shout from downstairs interrupted us. Emma's shifting friends were at our door, 3 teenage girls claiming they were worried. The one in front, Chloe, was about 16 with fresh cuts visible on her arms despite her long sleeves. Chloe broke down on our doorstep, admitting she'd almost tried the bathtub method last week, but got scared when her vision started going black. She showed us texts from Astrid calling her spiritually weak and unworthy of transcendence. The messages were cruel, manipulative, designed to make Chloe feel like a failure for choosing to live. I asked to see Chloe's phone, and she handed it over with shaking hands. The voice messages from Astrid made my skin crawl. She spoke in a hypnotic, soothing tone, guiding listeners through breathing exercises that mimicked drowning. Let the water fill your consciousness, her recorded voice instructed. The burning means you're close. Dad declared we were going to the police first thing in the morning, but Chloe panicked, begging us not to. Astrid had threatened to expose her shameful reality life to everyone if she ever spoke against the community. She had screenshots of Chloe's private confessions about her parents' divorce, her self-harm, her loneliness. The next morning, I drove to the police station alone while my parents stayed with Jake, who'd woken up screaming from nightmares. The officer I spoke with dismissed my concerns, saying online communities weren't illegal and kids playing pretend wasn't a crime. He suggested we focus on getting Emma psychiatric help instead of chasing internet ghosts. I returned home defeated to find Mom on Emma's TikTok account. She'd discovered Astrid's videos, dozens of them with thousands of views. Astrid appeared to be in her late 20s, with long ethereal hair and a soft voice. She taught consciousness separation techniques, always careful to use spiritual language that skirted legal boundaries. The wall behind Astrid in her videos was covered with drawings sent by her students, testimonials of successful shifts. My heart stopped when I spotted Emma's drawing of Hogwarts, labeled my star student, with a gold star sticker. My phone rang. Work was calling about my missed shift. My boss threatened termination if I missed another day. Mom overheard and screamed that my job didn't matter when Emma was in psychiatric hold, but we needed the money now more than ever. The hospital psychiatrist called that afternoon. Emma kept asking for Astrid's permission to eat, believing food would anchor her to false reality. She'd told the staff that Astrid was her spiritual mother, who understood her true nature. That evening, I created a fake account and paid the $50 membership fee to join Astrid's Inner Circle Shifters Discord. The chat logs made me sick. Teenagers discussing exit methods and comparing near-death experiences like they were achievements. The moderators, including Astrid, encouraged increasingly dangerous techniques. Scrolling through months of messages, I noticed references to someone named Riley Shifts Forever, who'd gone silent 6 months ago. The last message from Riley was excited, saying she was ready for permanent residence. After that, nothing. Other users asked about Riley, but Astrid would only say she'd achieved her goal. Dad discovered our credit card statements the next day. Emma had sent Astrid $500 over 3 months for personal mentoring sessions. The payments were labeled as spiritual counseling through a payment app. Dad's face turned purple as he realized we'd been funding our daughter's manipulation. Our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked on our door that afternoon. Her daughter, Luna, only 14, had come home talking about transcending reality after attending Emma's backyard shifting circle last month. We'd thought it was just teenage girls hanging out. We had no idea Emma was teaching them drowning techniques. Luna's older brother, Marcus, had been tracking Emma's group after finding his sister's journal. The pages were filled with drowning meditation instructions and drawings of portals opening underwater. Marcus was 17 and furious, ready to confront everyone involved. Marcus and I compared notes at our kitchen table. He'd identified at least 12 local teens who attended Astrid's virtual sessions. They met online every night at 9, practicing synchronized breathing exercises. Some parents thought their kids were doing yoga. Mom found a phone number in Emma's notebook labeled Emergency Shifting Support. She dialed before any of us could stop her. A woman answered sweetly until Mom identified herself as Emma's mother. Then the voice changed, laughing coldly. "Your daughter was so close to freedom," Astrid said. "You stopped her evolution." Jake had been listening from the stairs. He revealed that Emma had been making him practice holding breath underwater in the bath for weeks. She'd promised they'd meet Harry Potter together if he could last long enough. He'd thought it was a game until last night when she'd held him under for real. The terror in Jake's voice as he described those practice sessions broke something in me. Emma had been preparing him, building his trust, making him believe drowning was a doorway to magic. She'd been following Astrid's grooming playbook perfectly, and we'd never noticed. Astrid posted a TikTok video the next morning dedicated to Emma's bravery. My hands trembled as I watched Emma's school photo appear on screen with the caption, "Inspiration for all seekers." The comment section exploded with support from teenagers praising Emma's spiritual journey and condemning our family for stopping her evolution. I typed a warning comment about the dangers, but within minutes my inbox flooded with messages from Astrid's followers. They expressed sympathy for our closed-minded family attacking Emma's truth. Some shared their own near-drowning experiences as proof the method worked. The messages kept coming, each more disturbing than the last. Chloe's mother Paula called that afternoon. Her voice shook as she described finding Chloe in their bathtub at 3 in the morning, practicing what she called breath work. Paula had thought it was meditation until she noticed Chloe timing how long she could stay underwater. The realization hit both of us simultaneously. There had been multiple close calls we'd missed. Dad took Jake to see a child therapist the following day. When they returned, Dad's face was ashen. The therapist reported that Jake kept asking if he'd failed the test by not drowning properly. He believed Emma would be disappointed that he couldn't complete the shift. The psychological damage ran deeper than we'd imagined. I spent hours screenshotting every Discord conversation before Astrid could delete evidence. A pattern emerged in the chat logs. Astrid specifically targeted teens who mentioned bullying, isolation, or family problems. She'd slide into their direct messages with sympathy and promises of a better reality where they'd be loved and accepted. The police visited again after Dad filed a formal complaint. The officer took notes but ultimately concluded that teaching meditation techniques online wasn't illegal. He suggested we focus on Emma's mental health treatment rather than pursuing Astrid. The system couldn't help us. Marcus introduced me to his girlfriend Keiko, who'd attended one of Astrid's virtual sessions. Keiko's hands shook as she described how Astrid had asked participants who would miss them in this reality. When Keiko mentioned her grandmother, Astrid had suggested that attachments were chains keeping souls trapped. Keiko left the session immediately, but others had stayed. While gathering clothes for Emma's hospital stay, I discovered a hidden journal in her closet. Page after page described Astrid as the mother she'd always wished for. Emma had written about promises of permanent residence in her desired reality, where she'd never feel pain again. The manipulation was systematic and calculated. Chloe forwarded an email she'd received from Astrid after mentioning her parents' divorce in the Discord chat. Astrid had sent detailed bathtub instructions, explaining that water healing specifically helped children from broken homes transcend their circumstances. The targeting was precise and predatory. Mom posted a warning in our local Facebook group about the shifting community. The response was immediate and divided. Some parents thanked her for the information, but others defended shifting as harmless fantasy and attacked her parenting. Comments accused her of stifling teenage creativity and spiritual exploration. The community split into camps. Sarah, who'd been Emma's best friend before her isolation, reached out through Instagram. She revealed that Emma's personality had changed dramatically after Astrid privately messaged her about having special potential. Sarah had watched her friend slip away, powerless to help as Emma became convinced this reality was false. The hospital called with disturbing news. Emma had attempted to hold her breath until passing out, believing the staff was keeping her from shifting by forcing her to breathe. She insisted we were reality anchors preventing her transcendence. The medical team increased her supervision. That evening, I noticed Astrid hosting a live stream titled Helping Earthbound Souls Release. My blood ran cold when I saw 3 local teenagers in the chat, including Luna. They were typing about feeling trapped and misunderstood while Astrid validated their pain and offered solutions. Dad confronted Luna's parents with screenshots from the live stream. They immediately forbade Luna from using the internet, but she screamed that Astrid was the only adult who understood cosmic truth. The confrontation ended with Luna barricading herself in her room, refusing to speak to anyone who denied her spiritual path. Marcus discovered something chilling in the Discord archives. Riley's final message read that Astrid had promised tonight she'd finally get to stay in her desired reality forever. The timestamp was 6 months ago. No one had heard from Riley since. I drove 2 hours to Riley Morrison's hometown the next morning. Riley's mother answered the door with hollow eyes. When I explained why I'd come, she broke down completely. Riley was in permanent psychiatric care after what the doctors called a meditation accident that left her catatonic. She'd been found unconscious in the bathtub, barely alive. Riley's mother showed me journal after journal documenting an identical pattern to Emma's descent. Private mentoring from Astrid, escalating water methods, and promises of permanent shift to a happier reality. The similarities were too precise to be coincidence. This was Astrid's playbook. The most damning evidence came from doorbell camera footage. Riley's neighbor had complained about a strange woman visiting at odd hours. The grainy video showed someone matching Astrid's description entering Riley's house multiple times when her parents were at work. Astrid had been there in person. Marcus stayed to help despite his parents demanding he stop investigating. He admitted his sister Luna had already started practicing bathtub breathing. He'd caught her timing herself with her phone, trying to hit her previous records. The urgency of our situation intensified. Together, Marcus and I developed an intervention plan for the affected teens. We created a presentation showing the parallels between Emma's case and Riley's, hoping the evidence would break through the indoctrination. Our families met to discuss collective action while the teens continued their dangerous practices. Despite my rage toward Astrid, I refused Chloe's suggestion to publish Astrid's personal information online. We needed to protect the other kids without becoming predators ourselves. The moral line was thin, but crucial to maintain. I sent Astrid a direct message confronting her about Riley. Her response chilled me. She claimed Riley had achieved permanent residence in her desired reality. When I pressed for details, she insisted that what others called catatonia was actually successful consciousness transfer. She genuinely believed her own delusions. Riley's mother shared the psychiatric intake forms with our parent group. The documents mentioned guided imagery involving drowning and a female authority figure matching Astrid's description. The medical professionals had documented the grooming without fully understanding its source. 3 families successfully extracted their teenagers from Astrid's influence after our parent meeting. The kids protested they were being spiritually murdered, but their parents held firm. The small victory felt hollow knowing dozens more remained in danger. Astrid posted a tearful video about persecution for helping special souls transcend. She announced she was was organizing an intensive retreat for her most dedicated students. The threat of escalation loomed as she promised to guide them through advanced techniques in person. Local parents created a phone tree after discovering their teens had saved Astrid's content to private folders. We compared notes on manipulation tactics, building a database of warning signs. The grassroots effort grew as more families recognized the danger. I arranged a video call with Astrid, with several parents listening on speaker. She smiled serenely as she told me Emma had described me as the anchor dragging her down. She spoke of helping Emma escape a reality where she was unloved and misunderstood. Her calm certainty was more terrifying than anger would have been. At the grocery store, several teenagers approached me with condolences about Emma. They admitted they were scared of their own shifting groups now. The tide was slowly turning as kids began recognizing the dangerous path they were on. Dad found legal precedent about psychological manipulation of minors and consulted a lawyer. The attorney reviewed our evidence but concluded that proving criminal intent would be nearly impossible without direct admissions of harm. The legal system offered no solutions. Chloe revealed crucial information during a support meeting. Astrid often mentioned losing someone special named Jordan years ago. She constantly talked about reuniting across realities, suggesting her entire mission stemmed from unresolved grief. The revelation added a tragic dimension to her predatory behavior. I created a support group specifically for affected families, deliberately including teenagers to prevent them feeling attacked. We focused on open dialogue about the real dangers while acknowledging the pain that drove kids to seek escape. Building trust was essential for breaking Astrid's hold. 7 families attended our first meeting. Parents shared stories of finding their children practicing breath holding, spending college savings on crystals, and writing what appeared to be goodbye letters. The pattern was consistent and terrifying. During the meeting, one of the invited teenagers used Emma's exact phrase about water being the doorway. Dad's recognition was immediate. The language was scripted, programmed into vulnerable kids through repetition. We were dealing with systematic indoctrination. Mrs. Chen called at 4 a.m, hysterical. She'd heard strange sounds from the bathroom and broke down the locked door to find Luna hyperventilating next to a full bathtub. Luna insisted she was just practicing, but the setup suggested she'd been minutes from attempting a full submersion. The local news picked up our story after the parent group contacted them. The reporters focused on families trying to protect kids rather than attacking spiritual beliefs. The coverage was respectful but urgent, warning parents about online predators disguised as spiritual guides. During a family therapy session, Emma mentioned wanting to join Jordan in the golden reality. When the therapist asked who Jordan was, Emma became confused, saying Astrid talked about Jordan constantly, but she'd never asked for details. The name was clearly significant to Astrid's motivation. The retreat deadline approached rapidly. Despite parent warnings and interventions, 12 teenagers from surrounding areas confirmed attendance. They'd been convinced their families were trying to trap them in a painful reality. The countdown created mounting pressure. Multiple parents reported that Astrid had contacted their children through Instagram and TikTok even after they'd left her community. Her messages insisted their parents feared their power and wanted to keep them suffering. She was actively fighting to maintain control over her victims. I realized the legal system wouldn't help us. We needed Astrid to reveal her true intentions publicly, to disqualify herself in the eyes of her followers. The challenge was creating conditions where her mask would slip. The support group developed a reality check protocol. Teenagers would text each other every 2 hours confirming they were safe and present. The peer accountability system helped kids resist the urge to practice dangerous techniques alone. A parent who worked in property management recognized Astrid's building from her videos. His colleague managed the property and had received multiple noise complaints about chanting and water sounds at odd hours. We finally had a physical location to monitor. Emma sent her first letter from treatment. She wrote that Astrid had promised she'd never feel pain again, asking why we'd stopped her from finding peace. The words broke my heart, but I responded with love while documenting everything for evidence. Marcus filmed testimonies from 6 teenagers about Astrid's escalating demands. They described pressure to practice longer breath holds, to disconnect from family, and to prepare for permanent residence in their desired realities. The video evidence was crucial for warning others. Astrid announced the retreat location publicly, an abandoned wellness center 40 minutes away, with natural springs she claimed would enhance consciousness cleansing. The brazenness suggested she felt untouchable. Our parent group organized a legal monitoring presence at the retreat, while young adults like Marcus and me planned direct intervention if necessary. We walked a careful line between protection and vigilance, knowing any misstep could push vulnerable teens deeper into Astrid's influence. The wellness center owner revoked Astrid's booking after our parent group provided evidence of her dangerous teachings. She posted a tearful video about spiritual oppression, claiming society feared the evolution she offered. Her followers rallied to her defense. 5 families successfully extracted their teenagers from Astrid's influence using our support group's communication strategies. The kids initially resisted, but gradually began recognizing the manipulation they'd experienced. Each success gave us hope. A reporter investigating our story made a shocking discovery. Jordan was Astrid's younger sister who had drowned at 14. Astrid had found her body in the family pool. The tragedy suddenly explained everything: Astrid's obsession with water, consciousness transfer, and reuniting in other realities. Armed with this revelation, I crafted a message about helping Astrid heal from her loss instead of spreading her pain to other families. The approach required empathy, despite the damage she'd caused. Some parents disagreed, wanting pure confrontation, but I believed compassion might reach her where anger couldn't. 3 of Astrid's inner circle teenagers reached out privately, admitting they were scared after she suggested a group consciousness departure. The escalation toward mass tragedy was accelerating. We had limited time to intervene. Former follower Mika provided a recorded call where Astrid described guiding dozens to Jordan's reality as her life purpose. The 17-year-old's hands shook as she played the audio. Astrid's voice grew increasingly frantic as she detailed her nightly attempts to reach her sister through water meditation. The recording revealed someone consumed by grief, desperate to believe death wasn't permanent. Our parent group's collected evidence showed a clear pattern of escalation after each failed shift. Every time a teenager survived their attempt, Astrid pushed harder with the next student. The documentation painted a picture of someone spiraling deeper into delusion with each failure to reunite with Jordan. The support group hired an independent psychiatrist to review Astrid's public content. The assessment confirmed systematic grooming towards self-harm, disguised as spiritual guidance. The professional opinion gave our warnings more weight, though we still lacked legal recourse. 23 families across 3 towns joined our unified response. We agreed to monitor and support without attacking the teens' beliefs directly. The delicate balance required patience as we watched our children flirt with danger while believing they sought enlightenment. Astrid struck back with a video claiming I'd kidnapped Emma from her spiritual journey. She accused our family of holding Emma prisoner in a psychiatric facility against her will. The dangerous allegations sent her followers into a frenzy of support for their persecuted teacher. Child services arrived at our home the next morning following an anonymous tip. The caseworker investigated claims that Jake was being abused by an anti-spiritual family. Dad's face turned red as he explained the actual situation, showing documentation of Emma's attempt on Jake's life. The investigation cleared us quickly, but the threat was clear. 3 vulnerable teenagers disappeared from their homes after Astrid announced an emergency gathering. Their parents called in panic, describing empty bedrooms and notes about achieving permanent residence. The escalation we'd feared was happening. I had to track the missing teens alone while my parents dealt with the ongoing child services investigation. Marcus couldn't help because his parents had grounded him after discovering his involvement. Using the property management contact's information, I drove to the original wellness center location. Approaching the building, I heard Astrid's voice echoing from inside. She was telling the gathered teens that Jordan was waiting in the water, that tonight they'd all transcend together. My hands fumbled with my phone as I called Marcus and alerted the parent network. I entered the wellness center to find 7 teenagers in white robes standing around an industrial-sized tub filled with ice water. Astrid demonstrated proper submersion breathing, her movements graceful and practiced. The teens watched with glazed expressions, completely under her spell. Astrid explained calmly that she was helping them achieve what Emma couldn't. The teens nodded in agreement, some already hyperventilating in preparation. One girl, barely 13, swayed on her feet from oxygen deprivation. When I mentioned Jordan's death directly, Astrid's composure shattered. She screamed that Jordan hadn't died but had transcended to a better reality. Her face contorted with rage at my ignorance of spiritual truth. The mask had finally slipped. Luna suddenly doubled over and vomited from the hyperventilation practice. The spell broke as other teens rushed to help her, their concern for a friend overriding their trance state. Reality had intruded on their fantasy. I faced a choice between physically restraining Astrid or trying to talk the teens out of their dangerous plan. Violence would only reinforce their belief that we were the enemy. I chose compassion, sharing Jake's ongoing trauma in detail. I described Jake's nightmares, his refusal to take baths, his terror whenever he heard water running. I asked the teens who would find their younger siblings if they succeeded in their permanent shift. The question hung heavy in the air. 2 teens stepped away from the tub, tears streaming down their faces. They'd remembered their own siblings, their own connections to this reality. Astrid grabbed the youngest girl, pushing her toward the water in desperation. The other teens pulled the girl back as I positioned myself between Astrid and the tub. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing about saving them from pain like Jordan had suffered. Her grief poured out in waves, years of denial finally breaking. Astrid admitted she'd attempted shifting nightly for 3 years since finding Jordan's body. She showed us scars on her arms from her own drowning attempts. She believed she was too anchored to this reality to reach her sister, but maybe she could help others succeed where she'd failed. Parents arrived with EMTs just as Astrid's breakdown reached its peak. The teens chose to leave with their families, the spell of transcendence broken by witnessing their teacher's very human pain. Astrid rocked on the floor, repeating that Jordan was still waiting. I knelt beside Astrid and promised to tell Jordan's story with compassion rather than blame. She looked at me with hollow eyes, finally seeing the pain she'd spread to other families in her desperate attempt to reunite with her sister. The recognition seemed to break something fundamental in her. Astrid voluntarily entered the psychiatric transport, clutching a photo of Jordan she'd kept hidden in her robe. The EMTs were gentle, recognizing trauma rather than criminality. Our community's teens watched their spiritual leader reduced to a grieving sister, and the mythology crumbled. The wellness center owner arrived to find his property's main room soaked from the overturned tub. Instead of anger, he offered the space for our support group meetings. He'd lost his own daughter to online predators years ago and understood our mission. Over the following week, Emma called from treatment. Her voice was small as she described dreaming about Jake drowning, finally understanding that reality mattered because people in it could be hurt. The breakthrough came not from therapy, but from imagining our brother's terror. Our support group expanded to 50 families, creating educational resources about manipulation, disguised as spirituality. We focused on teaching recognition of grooming tactics, rather than attacking spiritual beliefs. The distinction mattered for reaching families before tragedy struck. The shifting community online began fragmenting after videos of Astrid's breakdown spread. Some hardcore believers claimed she'd been compromised by reality anchors, but many teens started questioning the methods they'd been taught. The doubt we'd planted was growing. Marcus's sister Luna joined our peer support program, sharing her experience to help other teens recognize the danger signs. She described the seductive promise of escaping pain and how it had almost cost her life. Her testimony reached kids in ways adult warnings couldn't, Local mental health services reported an increase in teens seeking help for what they called shifting addiction. The normalization of getting help rather than seeking escape through dangerous methods marked a significant change in our community's approach to teen mental health. Emma's treatment team allowed supervised video calls with family. Jake initially refused to participate, but eventually joined to tell Emma he forgave her. The conversation happened mostly through gestures and expressions, but the connection began healing their relationship. Several former followers created their own support content, explaining how they'd been manipulated and what helped them break free. The peer-to-peer education proved more effective than any adult intervention could have been. Astrid's family reached out through her treatment facility, thanking us for handling the situation with compassion. They'd been searching for her for 2 years, not knowing she'd created this elaborate system to process her grief over Jordan. The reunion offered hope for her recovery. Our family attended therapy together, processing the trauma of almost losing Jake and discovering Emma's dangerous obsession. The sessions were difficult but necessary, addressing how we'd missed the warning signs and how to rebuild trust. The online shifting community evolved, with some groups adding safety warnings and mental health resources. While we couldn't eliminate the practice entirely, harm reduction became part of the conversation. Progress came in small steps. Emma completed her initial treatment program and transitioned to outpatient care. She had to earn back privileges slowly, demonstrating she could distinguish between fantasy and reality. The process was frustrating for her but necessary for our family's safety. Jake started swimming lessons with a therapist who specialized in water trauma. Each small step into the pool was a victory over the terror Emma had instilled. His courage in facing his fears inspired our whole family. The Parent Support Network created a documentary about online predation, disguised as spiritual guidance. We shared it freely with schools and community centers, hoping to prevent other families from experiencing our nightmare. The project connected survivors and created a lasting resource. Astrid sent a letter 6 months later, apologizing for the pain she'd caused while trying to escape her own. She was learning to live with Jordan's death rather than denying it through elaborate fantasies. Her progress gave us hope that healing was possible for everyone involved. Emma returned home under strict supervision, her room stripped of shifting paraphernalia. She struggled with the mundane reality of homework and chores after believing she'd lived magical adventures. We celebrated small victories like her choosing to eat regular meals. The Wellness Center became a monthly gathering place for affected families. We shared resources, supported each other through setbacks, and celebrated recoveries. The community that formed from tragedy became a source of strength. Some teens still practice safe meditation, but the drowning methods died with the revelation of Jordan's tragedy. Understanding the source of Astrid's obsession helped kids recognize how grief could be twisted into dangerous beliefs. Education replaced prohibition as our primary tool. Our family bore lasting scars. Jake's water phobia required ongoing therapy. Emma's relationships remained strained as she rebuilt trust. Mom developed anxiety about online safety. Dad threw himself into advocacy work. I learned to balance protection with allowing my siblings space to heal. Astrid remained hospitalized long-term, working through complex grief and trauma. She sent occasional letters about finding Jordan in healing instead of water. Her journey toward accepting reality inspired some former followers to seek their own help. The families touched by this crisis focused on keeping their children anchored in a reality where they were loved, even when that reality included pain. We learned that escape wasn't the answer, but connection and support could make the pain bearable. Our community grew stronger through shared vigilance and compassion.